In the hands of the writer of the letter to the Hebrews, the history of Israel is the story of faith in the face of seemingly impossible odds. Even those who are sometimes treated in the pages of the Old Testament as faithless, he commends for their faith and holds them up before his congregation as examples of what faith means in the rough and tumble of life. Some of his examples are even outsiders to the community, outsiders whose trust in the God of Israel becomes a shining example for those in the Christian community who had come to the faith as outsiders themselves. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Wednesday, January 31st, 2024. Today's epistle reading for the daily lectionary continues mid-thought in a section of the letter to the Hebrews. Having defined faith as the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen, the writer has launched into a kind of litany of people who, by faith, obeyed God, often in the face of difficult situations or long odds. In yesterday's reading, he underlined the fact that many of the faithful kept the faith even though they themselves never lived to see the object of their hopes fulfilled. In today's reading, we find ourselves in the middle of this litany of the faithful, in a stretch that takes us from the birth of Moses through the exodus from Egypt and finally into the Promised Land. In this honor roll of faith, he includes some interesting characters. He writes, "By faith, Moses was hidden by his parents for 3 months after his birth because they saw that the child was beautiful, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called a son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to share ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He considered abuse suffered for the Christ to be greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking ahead to the reward. By faith, he left Egypt, unafraid of the king's anger, for he persevered as though he saw him who is invisible. By faith, he kept the Passover and the sprinkle of blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as if it were dry land, but when the Egyptians attempted to do so, they were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after they had been encircled for 7 days. By faith, Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had received the spies in peace." Moses' parents, Moses, the people of Israel, the walls of Jericho, Rahab the prostitute. It is an interesting enough list, isn't it? And of course, Moses dominates the picture. 3 times the writer tells us something Moses did by faith. He chose to give up his identity as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, identifying instead with Pharaoh's slaves. He left Egypt unafraid, claims the writer of Hebrews, and he kept the Passover when the angel of the Lord passed over the homes of the Israelites and inflicted death upon the homes of the Egyptians. All acts of remarkable faith for someone who could as easily have remained in the court and household of Pharaoh with all the privileges and creature comforts that came with it. Instead, he followed a God who was unknown to him to lead the people out of slavery. The book of Exodus is not always kind in its assessment of the children of Israel, frequently painting them as faithless and fickle. We think of how, when Moses was on the mountain for 40 days and nights, they lost faith and had Aaron cast for them a golden calf to worship in the desert. But here, the writer of Hebrews lifts up the faith it took to step foot into the dry seabed of the Red Sea when God parted the waters. Even with the Egyptian army bearing down upon them, it would have been an act of faith to walk into the midst of mighty waters. Curiously, the writer of Hebrews says, "By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after they had been encircled for 7 days." Is it the inanimate walls of the city that showed faith? or was it the faith of the people who brought them down? It seems logical that it would be the faith of the people. Inanimate objects, after all, do not have faith. But in this context, it is certainly possible that our writer means the walls themselves. And finally, Rahab the prostitute. In the story where she appears in the book of Joshua, she plays a pivotal role in safeguarding the men whom Joshua sent to spy on the city of Jericho before the Israelites laid siege to the city. She threw her lot in with the God of Israel and gave refuge to the spies when soldiers came looking for them. Surely it would have been the easier decision to give them up, but she believed that the God of the Israelites had already given them the land. How could she have known except by faith? All of these examples our writer uses to shore up the faltering faith of his long-suffering little flock. Individually, these stories are interesting enough. Taken together, they are a powerful testament to the power of faith. Tomorrow, the writer of Hebrews brings this litany of believers to a close using one of the most arresting images in the New Testament, the great cloud of witnesses. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.